Good morning, everybody. Just going to send out the link and get everyone on, and we'll go from here. One person has joined us already, and I haven't even put out the link yet. Amazing. Well done. Right. Okay. I think we're ready to go. Good morning, Farrell. I can see that you're there. Who else have we got with us today? That's better. Right. I hope everyone can hear me. I hope everyone can see me okay. Let's have a look if it's blurry. I think we should be okay. Okay. Let's get started. So, the warden, Mr. Sir, Mr. Pendanski, they found Stanley and Zero in the hole. They're covered, absolutely covered in lizards. And they're going to punish, well, they said they threatened to punish everyone else if they spoke about anything. So let's have a look. Chapter 47. So every time I read a new chapter, I always just have a little flick through the previous chapter and the previous few pages just to reorientate myself with what I've already read. So I'm going to just do that now. Okay, let's have a look. Chapter 47. The sun was up and Stanley's heart was beating. There were 8 lizards in the hole with him. Each one had exactly 11 spots. The warden had dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, and lines across her forehead and face, which seemed exaggerated in the stark morning light. Her skin looked blotchy. Satan, said Zero. Stanley looked at him, unsure if Zero had even spoken or if he had just imagined it. Why don't you go and see if you can take the suitcase from Zero? The warden suggested. Yeah, right, said Mr. Sir. The lizards obviously aren't hungry, said the warden. Then you go get the suitcase, said Mr. Sir. They waited. Satan Lee, said Zero. Sometime later, Stanley saw a tarantula crawl across the dirt and not too far from his hole. He had never seen a tarantula before, but there was no doubt what it was. He was momentarily fascinated by it as its big, hairy body moved slowly and steadily along. Look, a tarantula, said Mr. Sir, also fascinated. I've never seen one, said the warden, except in... Stanley felt a sharp sting on the side of his neck. The lizard hadn't bit him, however. It was merely pushing off. It leapt off Stanley's neck and pounced on the tarantula. The last Stanley saw of it was one hairy leg sticking out of the lizard's mouth. Not hungry, huh? Said Mr. Sir. Stanley tried to return to the snow, but it was harder to get there when the sun was up. What does that mean, when he tried to return to the snow, but it was harder to get there when the sun was up? Have a little think about that. That might be a question later. What did he mean? He tried to return to the snow. As the sun rose, the lizards moved lower in the hole, keeping mainly in the shade. They were no longer on his head and shoulders, but had moved down to his stomach, legs, and feet. He couldn't see any lizards on Zero, but believed there were 2 between Zero's knees, shaded from the sun by the suitcase. "How are you doing?" Stanley asked quietly. He didn't whisper, but his voice was dry and raspy. "My legs are numb," said Zero. "I'm trying to climb out the hole." "I'm going to try and climb out the hole," Stanley said. As he tried to pull himself up, just using his arms, he felt a claw dig into his ankle. He gently eased himself back down. Is that your last name first? Is your last name your first name backwards?" Zero asked. Stanley stared at him in amazement. Had he been working on that all night? He heard the sound of approaching cars. Mr. Sir and the warden heard it as well. "You think it's them?" asked the warden. It ain't the Girl Scouts selling cookies," said Mr. Sir. He heard the cars come to a stop, and the doors open and shut. A little while later, he saw Mr. Pendanski and 2 strangers coming across the lake. One was a tall man in a business suit and a cowboy hat. The other was a short woman holding a briefcase. The woman had to take 3 steps for every 2 taken by the man. "Stanley Yelnads," she called, moving out ahead of the others. I suggest you don't come any closer," said Mr. Sir. "You can't stop me," she snapped, and then took a second glance at him wearing pajama pants and nothing else. "We'll get you out of here, Stanley," she said. "Don't you worry." She appeared to be Hispanic, with straight black hair and dark eyes. She spoke with a little bit of a Mexican accent, trilling her R's. Now, I've already committed to my horrible American accent, so I don't think I'm going to try a Mexican accent. "What in tarnation?" the tall man exclaimed as he came up behind her. She turned on him. "I'm telling you right now, if any harm comes to him, we will be filing charges, not only against Miss Walker and Camp Green Lake, but the entire state of Texas as well. Child abuse, false imprisonment, torture." The man was more than a head taller than she, and was able to look directly over her as he spoke to the warden. "How long have they been in there?" "All night. As you can see by the way we're dressed. They snuck into my cabin while I was asleep and stole my suitcase. I chased after them, and they ran out here and fell into the lizard's nest. I don't know what they were thinking." "That's not true," Stanley said. "Stanley, as your attorney, I advise you not to say anything," said the woman, "until you and I have had a chance to talk in private." Stanley wondered why the warden lied about the suitcase. He wondered who it legally belonged to. That was one thing he wanted to ask his lawyer, if she really was his lawyer. "It's a miracle they're still alive," said the tall man. "Yes, it is," the warden agreed, with just a trace of disappointment in her voice. "And they better come out of this alive." Stanley's lawyer warned. "This wouldn't have happened if you'd released him to me yesterday." "It wouldn't have happened if he wasn't a thief," said the warden. "I told him he would be set free today. I guess he decided to try and take some of my valuables with him. He's been delirious for the last week." "Why didn't you release him when she came to you yesterday?" the tall man asked. "She didn't have proper authorization," said the warden. "I had a court order. It wasn't authenticated," the warden said. "Authenticated? It was signed by the judge who sentenced him." "I needed authentication from the Attorney General," said the warden. "How do I know it's legitimate? The boys in my custody have proven themselves dangerous to society. Am I supposed to just turn them loose anytime someone hands me a piece of paper?" "Yes," said the woman, "if it's a court order." "Stanley has been hospitalized for the last few days," the warden explained. "He's been suffering from hallucinations and delirium ranting and raving. He was in no condition to leave. The fact that he was trying to steal from me on the day before his release proves... Stanley tried to climb out of the hole, using mostly his arm so as not to disturb the lizards too much. As he pulled himself upward, the lizards moved downwards, keeping out of the sun's direct rays. He swung his legs up and over, and the last of the lizards hopped off. "Thank God!" exclaimed the warden. She started towards him, and then stopped. A lizard crawled out of his pocket and down his leg. Stanley was overcome by a rush of dizziness and almost fell over. He steadied himself, and then reached down, took hold of Zero's arm, and helped him slowly to his feet. Zero still held the suitcase. The lizards, which he had been hiding under it, scurried quickly into the hole. Stanley and Zero staggered away. The warden rushed to them. She hugged Zero. "Thank God you're alive," she said, as she tried to take the suitcase from him. He jerked it free. "It belongs to Stanley," he said. "Don't cause any more trouble," the warden warned. "You stole it from my cabin. You've been caught red-handed. If I press charges, Stanley might have to return to prison. Now, I'm willing, in view of all circumstances, to..." "It's got his name on it," said Zero. Stanley's lawyer pushed past the tall man to have a look. "See?" Zero showed her. "Stanley Yelnats." Stanley looked too. There, in big black letters, was Stanley Yelnats. The tall man looked over the heads of the others and at the name on the suitcase. "You say he stole it from your cabin?" The warden stared at it in disbelief. That's impossible. She couldn't even say it. Okay, that's the end of chapter 47. So, as a quick summary, let's have a look. They're out of the hole. They've got the chest, the treasure chest. It's got Stanley's name on it. Do you think it's Stanley's name, or do you think it's someone in his family's name? I'm thinking it's obviously his great-great-great-grandfather's chest. And let's have a look. I don't think it's going to end well for the warden. She's been caught out lying and trying to deceive people. So let's go on to chapter 48. It's a very, very short chapter, I think. Yes, a couple of pages. They walked slowly back to camp. The tall man was the Texas Attorney General, the chief law enforcement officer for the state. Stanley's lawyer was named Miss Marengo. Stanley held the suitcase. He was so tired, he couldn't think straight. He felt as if he was walking in a dream, not quite able to comprehend what was going on around him. They stopped in front of the camp office. Mr. Sir went inside to get Stanley's belongings. The Attorney General told Mr. Pendanski to get the boys something to drink and eat. The warden seemed as dazed as Stanley. You can't even read," she said to Zero. Zero said nothing. Wow, guys, lots of chat going on there. Goodness me. Hope you're paying attention. Zero said nothing. Miss Marengo put a hand on Stanley's shoulder and told him to hang in there. He would be seeing his parents soon. She was shorter than Stanley, but somehow gave the appearance of being tall. Mr. Pendanski returned with 2 cartons of orange juice and 2 bagels. Stanley drank the juice, but didn't feel like eating anything. "Wait!" the warden exclaimed. I didn't say they stole the suitcase. It's his suitcase, obviously. But he put my things from my cabin inside his suitcase. That isn't what you said earlier, said Miss Marengo. What's in the suitcase? The warden asked Stanley. Tell us what's in it, and then we'll open it and see. Stanley didn't know what to do. Stanley, as your lawyer, I advise you not to open the suitcase, said Miss Marengo. He has to open it, said the warden. I have the right to check the personal property of any detainees. How do I know there aren't drugs or weapons in there? He stole a car too. I've got witnesses. She was nearly hysterical. He's no longer under your jurisdiction, said Stanley's lawyer. He has not been officially released, said the warden. Open the suitcase, Stanley. Do not open it, Stanley, said his lawyer. Stanley did nothing. Mr. Sir returned from the office with Stanley's backpack and clothes. The Attorney General handed Miss Marengo a sheet of paper. You're free to go, he said to Stanley. I know you're anxious to get out of here, so you can just keep the orange suit as a souvenir. Or burn it, or whatever you want. Good luck, Stanley. Good luck, Stanley. He reached out his hand to shake, but Miss Marengo hurried Stanley away. Come on, Stanley. We got a lot to talk about. Stanley stopped and turned to look at Zero. He couldn't just leave him there. Zero gave him the thumbs up. I can't leave Hector, Stanley said. I suggest we go, said his lawyer with a sense of urgency in her voice. I'll be okay, said Zero. His eyes shifted towards Mr. Pendanski on one side of him, and then to the warden and Mr. Sir on the other. There's nothing I can do for your friend, said Mrs. Marengo. You are released pursuant to an order from the judge. They'll kill him, said Stanley. Your friend is not in danger, said the Attorney General. There's going to be an investigation into everything that's happened here. For the present, I am taking charge of the camp. Come on, Stanley, said his lawyer. Your parents are waiting. Stanley stayed where he was. His lawyer sighed. His lawyer sighed. May I have a look at Hector's file? She asked. Certainly, said the Attorney General. Miss Walker, go get Hector's file. She looked at him blankly. Well, the warden turned to Mr. Pendanski. Bring me Hector Zeroni's file. He stared at her. Get it, she ordered. Who remembers what they did with Zero's file a little while back when he first went missing, when he first ran away? I think they disposed of it, do you remember? So now they haven't got it. So it's going to get them into trouble. Mr. Pendanski went into the office. He returned a few minutes later and announced the file was apparently misplaced. The Attorney General was outraged. What kind of camp are you running here, Miss Walker? The warden said nothing. She stared at the suitcase. The Attorney General assured Stanley's lawyer that he would get the records. Excuse me, just while I call my office. He turned back to the warden. I assume the phone works? He walked into the camp office, slamming the door behind him. A little while later, he reappeared and told the warden he wanted to talk to her. She cursed and then went inside. Stanley gave Zero thumbs up. Caveman, is that you? He turned to see Armpit and Squid coming out of the rec room. Squid shouted back in the rec room, Caveman and Zero are out there! Soon, all the boys from Group D gathered around him and Zero. Good to see you, man, Armpit said, shaking his hand. We thought you were buzzard food. Stanley is being released today, said Mr. Pendanski. Way to go, said Magnet, hitting him on the shoulder. You didn't even have to step on a rattlesnake, said Squid. Even Zigzag shook Stanley's hand. Sorry about, It's cool, said Stanley. We had to lift the truck clear out of the hole, Zigzag told him. It took everybody in group C, D, and E. We just picked it right up. It was really cool, said Twitch. X-Ray was the only one who didn't come over. Stanley saw him hang back behind the others a moment and then return to the rec room. Guess what? Said Magnet, glancing at Mr. Pendanski. Mom says we don't have to dig holes anymore. That's great, said Stanley. Will you do me a favor? Asked Squid. I guess, Stanley agreed, somewhat hesitantly. I want you to... He turned to Miss Marengo. Hey, lady, you have a pen and paper I can borrow? She gave it to him, and Squid wrote down a phone number, which he gave to Stanley. Call my mom for me, okay? Tell her I said I was sorry. Tell her Alan said he was sorry. Stanley promised he would. Stanley promised he would. Now, you be careful out there in the real world, said Armpit. Not everyone is as nice as us. Stanley smiled. The boys departed when the warden came out of the door. Can we read the rest of the book? Yeah, I'm going to read a little bit now. I'm going to read the end of this chapter, and then we're going to get to 49 and 50. Do you know what? I'll read it all now. Why not? And then you can go back and listen to each chapter, ready for the quiz each day. That'll save me some time, and it will save you some time as well. How about that? It was really cool, said, where are we? Not everyone is as nice as us. Stanley smiled. The boys departed when the warden came out of the office door. The Attorney General was right behind her. My office is having some difficulty locating Hector Cerrone's records, the Attorney General said. So, you have no claim of authority over him? Asked Mrs. Marengo. I didn't say that. He's in the computer. We just can't access his records. It's like they've fallen through a hole in cyberspace. A hole in cyberspace, Mrs. Marengo repeated. How interesting. When is his release date? I don't know. How long has he been here? Like I said, we can't. So what are you planning to do with him? Keep him confined indefinitely without justification while you go crawling through black holes in cyberspace? Right. I have no idea what you're asking there, guys, or what you're saying. So I'm just going to ignore that message. The Attorney General stared at her. He was obviously incarcerated for a reason. Oh, and what reason was that? The Attorney General said nothing. Stanley's lawyer took hold of Zero's hand. Come on, Hector. You're coming with us. Chapter 49. We're going to start chapter 49 now. So you can stop here if you want to. You can come back to it later. The video will stay up so you can rewind and rewatch it. There never used to be yellow-spotted lizards in the town of Green Lake. They didn't come to the area until after the lake dried up. But the townsfolk had heard about the red-eyed monsters living in the desert hills. One afternoon, Sam, the onion man, and his donkey, Mary Lou, were returning to his boat, which was anchored just a little offshore. It was late in November, and the peach trees had lost most of their leaves. Sam! Someone called. He turned around to see 3 men running after him, waving their hats. He waited. Afternoon, Walter, Bo, Jesse. He greeted them. As they walked up, catching their breath. Glad we caught you, said Bo. We're going rattlesnake hunting in the morning. We wanted to get some of your lizard juice, said Walter. I ain't scared of no rattlesnake, said Jesse. I just don't want to come across one of those red-eyed monsters. I seen one once, and that was enough. I knew about the red eyes, of course, and I hadn't heard about the big black teeth. It was the white tongues that get me, said Bo. Sam gave each man 2 bottles of his onion juice. I meant that the warden said they can't get the file. They can, but barely anyone else can. Oh, I see. I got you, Holly. Right, let me get back to it. Sam gave each man 2 bottles of pure onion juice. He told them to drink 1 bottle before going to bed that night, and then half a bottle in the morning and half a bottle around lunchtime. You sure this stuff works? Asked Walter. I'll tell you what, said Sam. If it doesn't, you can come back next week and I'll give you your money back. Walter looked around unsure as Bo and Jesse laughed, and then Sam laughed too. Even Mary Lou let out a rare hee-haw. Just remember, Sam told the men before they left, it's very important you drink a bottle tonight. You got to get it in your bloodstream. The lizards don't like onion blood. Stanley and Zero sat in the back seat of Mrs. Marengo's BMW. The suitcase lay between them. It was locked. And they decided they'd let Stanley's father try to open it in his workshop. You don't know what's in it, do you? She asked. No, said Stanley. I didn't think so. The air conditioning was on, but they drove with the windows open as well. Because, well, no offense, but you boys really smell bad. Miss Marengo explained that she was a patent attorney. I'm helping your father with the new product he's invented. He happened to be in your situation. He happened to mention your situation. So I did a little investigating. Clyde Livingston's sneakers were stolen sometime before 3:15. I found a young man, Derek Dunn, who said that at 3:20, you were in the bathroom fishing your notebook out of the toilet. 2 girls remembered seeing you come out of the boys' restroom carrying a wet notebook. Stanley felt his ears redden. Even after everything he'd been through, the memory still caused him to feel shame. So you couldn't have stolen them, said Miss Marengo. He didn't. I did, said Zero. You did what? Asked Miss Marengo. I stole the sneakers. The lawyer actually turned around while driving and looked at him. I didn't hear that, she said, and I advise you to make sure I don't hear it again. What did my father invent? Stanley asked. Did he find a way to recycle sneakers? No, he's still working on that, explained Miss Marengo. But he's invented a product that eliminates foot odor. Here, I've got a sample in my briefcase. I wish I had more. Right. Can we, I'm just going to ask everyone to stop the chat for a moment because it's getting a little bit, wonder if I can stop it. No. It's just getting a little bit distracting for everyone else, I think. So just only speak if you need to say something important. Where were we? Oh, yeah. So she's going to give the sample of the foot odor eliminator. She opened her briefcase with one hand and passed a small bottle back to Stanley. It had a fresh, somewhat spicy smell. He handed it to Zero. Well, what's it called? Stanley asked. We haven't come up with a name yet, said Miss Marengo. It smells familiar, said Zero. Peaches, right? asked Miss Marengo. That's what everyone says. A short while later, both boys fell asleep. Behind them, the sky had turned dark, and for the first time in over 100 years, a drop of rain fell into the empty lake. Part 3. This is the final part. The final chapter. Stanley's mother insists that there was never a curse. She even doubts whether Stanley's great-great-grandfather really stole a pig. The reader might find this interesting, though, that Stanley's father invented his cure for foot odor the day after The great-great-grandson of Elya Yelnats carried the great-great-great-grandson of Madame Zeroni up the mountain. The Attorney General closed Camp Green Lake. Miss Walker, who was in desperate need of money, had to sell the land which had been in her family for generations. It was bought by a national organization dedicated to the well-being of young girls. In a few years, Camp Green Lake will become a Girl Scout camp. This is pretty much the end of the story. The reader probably still has some questions, but unfortunately, from here on in, the answers tend to be long and tedious. While Mrs. Bell, Stanley's former math teacher, might want to know the percent change in Stanley's weight, the reader probably cares more about the change in Stanley's character and self-confidence. But those changes are subtle and hard to measure. There is no simple answer. Even the contents of the suitcase turned out to be somewhat tedious. Stanley's father pried it open in his workshop, and at first everyone gasped at the sparkling jewels. Stanley thought he and Hector had become millionaires. But the jewels were of poor quality, worth no more than $20,000. And underneath the jewels was a stack of papers that had once belonged to Stanley Yelnats. These consisted of stock certificates, deeds of trust, and promissory notes. They were hard to read and even more difficult to understand. Miss Marengo's law firm spent more than 2 months going through all the papers. They turned out to be a lot more valuable than the jewels. After legal fees and taxes, Stanley and Zero each received less than $1 million, but not a lot less. It was enough for Stanley to buy his family a new house with a laboratory in the basement, and for Hector to hire a team of private investigators. But it would be boring to go through all the tedious details of all the changes in their lives. Instead, the reader will be presented with one last scene, which took place almost 1.5 years after Stanley and Hector left Camp Green Lake. And you will have to fill in the holes yourself. This is the scene. There was a small party at the Yelnats' house. Except for Stanley and Hector, everyone there was an adult. All kinds of snacks and drinks were set out on the counter, including caviar, champagne, and the fixings to make ice cream sundaes. The Super Bowl was on television, but nobody was really watching. "It should be coming on at the next break," Mrs. Marengo announced. A timeout was called in the football game, and a commercial came on the screen. Everyone stopped talking and watched. The commercial showed a baseball game. Amid a cloud of dust, Clyde Livingston slid into the home plate as the catcher caught the ball and tried to tag him out. "Safe!" shouted the umpire as he signaled with his arms. The people at Stanley's house cheered as if the run really counted. Clyde Livingston on the TV got up and dusted the dirt off his uniform. As he made his way back to the dugout, he spoke to the camera. "Hi, I'm Clyde Livingston, but everyone around here calls me Sweet Feet." "Way to go, Sweet Feet," said another baseball player, slapping his hand. Besides being on the television screen, Clyde Livingston was also sitting on the couch next to Stanley. "But my feet weren't always sweet," the television Clyde Livingston said as he sat down on the dugout bench. "They used to smell so bad that nobody would sit near me in the dugout." "They really did stink," said the woman sitting on the couch on the other side of Clyde. She held her nose with one hand and fanned the air with the other. Clyde shushed her. "Then a teammate told me about sploosh," said the television Clyde. He pulled a can of sploosh out from under the dugout bench and held it up for everyone to see. "I just spray a little on each foot every morning, and now I really do have sweet feet. Plus, I like the tingle." "Sploosh," said a voice. "A treat for your feet. made from all natural ingredients. It neutralizes odor-causing fungi and bacteria. Plus, you'll like the tingle. Everyone at the party clapped their hands. He wasn't lying, said the woman. He wasn't lying, said the woman who sat next to Clyde. I couldn't even be in the same room as him with his socks. The other people at the party laughed. The woman continued. I'm not joking. It was so bad. You've made your point, said Clyde, covering her mouth with his hand. He looked back at Stanley. Will you do me a favor, Stanley? Stanley raised and lowered his left shoulder. I'm going to get more caviar, said Clyde. Keep your hand over my wife's mouth. He patted Stanley on the shoulder as he rose from the couch. Stanley looked uncertainly at his hand and then at Clyde Livingston's wife. She winked at him. He felt himself blush and turned away toward Hector, who was sitting on the floor in front of an overstuffed chair. The woman sitting in the chair behind Hector was absent-mindedly fluffing his hair with her fingers. She wasn't very old, but her skin had a weathered look to it, almost like leather. Her eyes seemed weary, as if she'd seen too many things in her life that she didn't want to see. And when she smiled, her mouth seemed too big for her face. Very softly, she half sang, half hummed a song that her grandmother used to sing to her when she was a little girl. If only, the moon speaks no reply, reflecting the sun and all that's gone by. Be strong, my weary wolf. Turn around boldly. Fly high, my baby bird, my angel, my only. And that is the end of the book. Okay. One of my favorite books that is really, really good. It's got so many beautiful details in there that are really hard to miss the first time you read it. The next time you read it, you start to pick up on all the clues that the author has left. Just like we did with the London Eye mystery. You've got that mysterious kind of, the author is leaving clues there for you. And I found that book this book has so much more in it than what you're reading. If you look underneath the surface, if you read between the lines, there's so many really great things. So enjoy the quiz on that, and I will get that up for you in a moment. I'm going to go straight into maths now. I'm really looking forward to this maths lesson because it's percentages, and I absolutely love percentages. So I'm going to turn the camera around. Follow along. Pause the video if you need to, because I want you to do the maths work before you see me do it. So let's do this. Okay. Can everyone see? I hope everyone can see okay. Oh dear. Right. Okay, we got lots of people watching, lots of people ready. So let's have a look at the maths. Today we are understanding percentages. Now, if you already know anything about percentages, that's going to help you out a lot, because basically all you need to know today is that a percentage, when you write a percentage, it uses this symbol. And so if I had something like 72%, which we'll talk about what that is in a minute, that basically looks like that. And the percent, well, it comes from two separate words. Per means out of, and cent comes from the old word for 100. So basically, every time you're working with percentages, it's out of 100. So this 72% is 72 out of 100 percent out of 100. You got it. Well done, Ollie. So 72% is 72 out of 100. It's just another way of writing it. 100. Okay. Let's have a look at some of the questions. I'll talk through them, I'll do them, and then we'll go from there. So complete the sentence for the diagram, for each diagram. So A, there are how many parts out of 100 shaded? Well, there's 100 square, 10 by 10, 10 by 10. So how many are shaded? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 parts out of 100. As a percent, easy. 9%. Easy as that. This one, how many parts are shaded? Let's have a look. I've got 10, 10, and 4. So that's 24. How many is that as a what is that as a percentage? 24%. 24 out of 100. Always out of 100. See? Let's have a look. I need to do careful counting here. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 65. 65 parts out of 100. That's 65%. Always out of 100. If you're not sure about any of the questions, when you go to the White Rose Home Learning website, where you got the sheet from, if you saw the link on the Class Dojo, there's a video there as well made by other people, and they talk through the questions with the computer graphics and everything, which is a bit more high-tech than what I'm doing. Okay, complete the table. This should be nice and easy. So here's 100 square, here's percentage. How many have I got there? I can see 15, 15%. This one, I can see 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 63, 63%. Next one. Ooh, this is a good one. So 82% is on this side. All I need to do is shade in 82. Now, obviously, you can do that a lot neater than I can, but you're just going to shade in 82 out of 100. Question 3. Shade 15% of the 100 square red, and then shade 32 blue. So let's have a look then. 15% red. So 15% is 15 out of 100. I know that. Right. There we go. There's 15%. I've shaded in red and blue. I need to do 32. So let's have a look. I might actually start from here. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 16, 26, 30. I'm counting up an extra 4 and 32. So it could look something like that. Okay. Shading in red and then what percentage of the 100 square is not shaded? Okay, let's have a look. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 10s. That's 50. And I've got an extra 4 there. So that's 54% is not shaded. Right. Is 1% of this bar shaded? Is 1% of it shaded? Well, I know, let's just rewind. 1% means 1 out of 100. Because 1%, that's what it means. Percent means out of 100. I'm going to keep coming back to that. Okay. 1%. That bar doesn't look like it's got 1 out of 100, does it? This looks like this bit that's shaded is out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's actually 1 out of 10. So is it shaded 1%? No. So my reasoning here is going to be nice and simple. I'm going to write something like this. I can see 1 out of 10 has been shaded. 1% is 1 out of 100. So there's my explanation. I know that it's not 1% because it's not 1 out of 100. It's only 1 out of 10. What percentage of each bar model is shaded? Let's have a look then. Now, this is where you have to convert, okay? Check this out. I'm going to try and do this as clearly as I can. Let's have a look. I've got 10 pieces altogether. How many have I got shaded? 3. So that's 3/10. Now, it wants my answer as a percentage. All I need to do to write that as a percentage is make that out of 100. How do I get 10 to be 100? Well, I times it by 10. What do I do to the numerator? I do the same thing. I times it by 10. 30 out of 100. 30 out of 100 is 30%. It's as simple as that. Okay? If you've got something out of 10, then you just multiply it by 10 to get to 100. The denominator needs to be 100. You do the same thing to the numerator, and you get 30 out of 100. Okay? Let's have a look at the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 out of 10 is what I've got. As a percentage, I need to make it out of 100. So I make it an equivalent fraction. Let's do the same thing. Times it by 10, because 10 times 10 is 100. So 7 times 10 is 70. 70%. Okay? You're correct, Ollie. Well done. You got it. So the more you do this, the actual, like this is, percentages can be really, really easy as soon as you understand what you're actually doing. Passengers are boarding a plane. The plane has 100 seats. Brilliant. If it's out of 100, it's going to make it super, super easy. So 10% of the seats are already full. How many passengers are already on the plane? Okay, 10% is 10 out of 100. We already know that there's 100 seats. So if there's 10 seats out of 100 on the plane that are full, that means that there's going to be 10 people. That's nice and easy, isn't it? 15% of the seats have not been booked. How many seats have not been booked? Well, 15 out of 100. The plane has 100 seats, so I don't need to change anything. It's just 15 out of 100, so the answer is 15. And how many passengers still need to board the plane? Okay. This is where you have to do a little bit of adding and subtracting. So I know that there are 100 seats. So I know that 10 out of 100 is full. I know I need to find out how many more need to come on to make it full. Now, I know that there have been 15%, 15 out of 100 has not been booked. So what's the full, if I take the plane, 100, and I subtract 15, I get myself 85. I'm not going to do the full calculation there. So I've got 85 seats in total. If there's already been 10 people on the plane, how many more till it's full? Or how many people need to board the plane? So it's 85 I need to get to. I've already got 10. Well, I know that 85 is what I need to get to. I've already got 10. So let's take away the 10 that I've already got, 75. Because 75 add 10 is 85. So that's 75 people, 75 passengers. Okay. So you're going to make sure that I'm just looking at the comments here. Regan, well done. It is 75 because you've already got 15% of people, 15% of the seats have not been booked. They've not been used. So that means you've only got 85 people coming on the plane. Okay. If you've already got 10 people, that leaves 75 people. Right. Okay, let's have a look. Question 6. Dexter has £1 to spend. He buys some stickers and he gets 35p change. What percentage of his money did Dexter spend? Bit of a problem-solving one here, but nothing too complicated, because I know that a pound is made up of how many pence? 100 pence. So if he's got 35 pence back, he gave his pound, he got 35 pence back. Let's do 100, take away 35. That means we're left with 65. So what percentage of his money did he spend? He spent 65p, which is 65 pence, out of how much? Well, he had 100 pence. 65 out of 100 is going to be 65%. Okay, it's always out of 100. Always out of 100. Aisha and Brett have been selling tickets for the school play. I'm going quite quick today, guys. I'm going quite quick because after this, I'm going to re-record another video for tomorrow. It's not going to be a live video. It's just going to be a recording for tomorrow's work and Friday, so that you'll have all week ready to look at. Because I'm only allowed to come into school one day a week. So Aisha and Brett have been selling tickets for the school play. There are 100 seats available. I'm loving this. This is great. All my questions so far are out of 100, so I don't actually need to do any changing. So I've got my 100 seats. On Monday, they sold 34%. That's 34 out of 100. On Tuesday, they sold 42 tickets. Well, they were 100 seats. They've sold 42 of the tickets. So that's 42 out of 100. By the end of Wednesday, 95% of the tickets had been sold. Okay, how many tickets did they sell on Wednesday? So the first thing I'm going to do is check out Monday and Tuesday and put them together so I know how many I've got. So 34 out of 100 and 42. Well, 70 Monday and Tuesday. 76 out of 100, remember? On Wednesday, they got to 95%, 95 out of 100. So let's have a look. 76. How much more do I need to get to 95? Well, I could either do a subtraction, use the inverse. I could just count up. That might be easier. So 86, that's 10. Add another 9, 95. So I've got another 19 more. So I've added 19. So how many did they sell on Wednesday? They sold 19 tickets. 19 tickets. If I ran through that really quickly and you didn't get it, just go back. Okay, rewind it, watch it again. If you need to watch the same bit like 2 or 3 times, that is what helps. I do it all the time when I'm learning things. Read it again, watch it again, whatever it is you're doing. And 8. Shade 85% of the bar model. Now, I've got a problem. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's out of 10. I know that 85% is 85 out of 100. So how do I get that 85 to be out of 10? And what do I need to shade in? Well, this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to divide it by, so 85 out of 100 is 85%. I'm going to turn it into 10 by dividing by 10, by making it 10 times smaller. So when I do the same to this one, now this is not an answer. It becomes 8.5. 8.5 is not an answer. You can't have 8.5 tenths. But what you can do, because this is out of 10, I can shade in 8.5 squares. So I can shade in, so that's 10%, because it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. If I shade in another one, I'm going to have 90. I don't want 90. I just want 85. So I'm actually going to shade in half of that square, okay? Because that will be 80 and half, which, because out of 10, it's 8.5. So I'm going to shade in 8.5. 8.5, 8.5. if I want to go back then, flip it back just to check. 8.5 times 10. 10 times 10. You get to 85 out of 100, which is 85%. Okay, that's a really, really tricky one there. So, yeah, go back, watch the video again. Look at the video on the White Rose website as well, next to where you got the sheet from, where you can get the sheets from, and have a little look. I'm going to now record another video and upload it ready for tomorrow and Friday. Okay, lovely to see you all. Hope you're all doing well. It is April the 1st today, so if you've got any good pranks for anyone, because it's April the 1st, you can try and trick people. Have a go. Bye, everyone. What's buggy? What does that mean? Before I go, teach me what buggy means. The audio. Is the audio really bad? It's glitchy. Okay. That's a shame. Don't know what else I can do. The picture's bad, is it? Oh, adios. I see. Okay. Unfortunately, I don't know what I can do about the glitchiness because it's a live video. Hopefully in the one that I upload tomorrow and on Friday, that might be better. Go back and listen to the daily read again. I read the whole end of the book. If you haven't seen it yet, go back, listen to it again so you can answer the quiz properly. Adios.